Let's bring in the New York Times White House correspondent, Maggie Haberman. She, of course, is the co-author of the New York Times best-selling book, Regime Change. Maggie, always a pleasure to have you. With the president, as you have witnessed firsthand, me as well, all of us, frankly, it's always somebody else's fault. It's never his own. Is this an acknowledgement that he recognizes his party's chances in November are shrinking?
There's no other way to look at it, that he recognizes that this could be a problematic midterms for his party. I think the difference is whether he is going to accept any responsibility for that, which, as you showed, he's not. And this is something of a repeat of what happened in 2018. In 2018, he was, according to all people around him, pretty indifferent to what might happen if Democrats won. He, and particularly his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, believed there was going to be some kind of an opportunity to work with Democrats, that it would be better to have them to blame. There were people in the White House at the time who had far more government experience and were trying to say, actually, that's really not how this is going to go. There's going to be a lot of oversight. There are going to be, I think, vastly more intense oversight efforts this time, although I don't quite now know what that will look like or how much the president will respond to it. But look, the president has very carefully walked the line for a long time of somehow being held separately from his party and polling generally slightly better than generic Republicans. It's not clear that's going to hold right now. One of the things that Jonathan and I found for our book, and I'm sorry, Peter, I'll finish one sec, is just how sort of not nervous he is about any of this. Now, he might start focusing a little more now, but he hasn't been.
Sorry, Mac, I interrupted you on the satellite delay, but that's what gets me here, which is the poll numbers are not good. They're like 33% right now. These are historic lows for him. Is he even aware of these data points? Does he even recognize the sort of headwinds he's now facing?
It's becoming harder for him to pretend that it's not real. I would like to point out that his own pollsters have been saying for over a year now that voters want more focus and honesty. And again, this polling memo that Jonathan and I have in Regime Change, written by Trump's pollster that we got our hands on, he was very blunt last December that unless the White House and the Republican Party was honest in all caps, about the situation and affordability crisis that voters are facing, that they were going to face real problems going into this year. The president has certainly not changed how he is speaking about it in any meaningful way. But the behavior does indicate that it is harder for him to suggest that this is all just fake.
I'm also struck by the fact that in just a couple weeks from now, Republicans are going to head off to Texas for what some have called Trumpapalooza, the sort of midterm convention. And one of the challenges a lot of these Republicans, congressional Republicans, are facing is this just promoting Donald Trump, and how does it help them specifically for their own unique races in their own districts?
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a question. This is mostly going to be an event that is going to promote the president, according to our reporting. I think that the vice president will speak there, and the president will appear on night one. Then the president is going to appear the next night. There'll be themes. There are going to be other speakers. Candidates are being urged at minimum to attend. Many of them don't want to because, as you say, this is just instant ad fodder for Democrats running against them to use. This is not a night that is going to be about what the candidates need. It is going to be about what the president wants. Now, look, Peter, he has, plowed his way through difficult circumstances repeatedly. This is one of the themes of our book, and things tend to work out okay for him. Doesn't mean it works out okay for everybody else around him.
The president, as we have witnessed, has sort of lived by this sense that repetition makes reality, that if he says something enough times that it will be true, specifically as it relates to the Iran war. He said it'll be done. It was a short excursion, will be done in 4 weeks. It'll be done soon, be done within days. A deal is right around the corner. But now he has sort of changed his message. He's pivoted to this economic pressure campaign, the economic D-Day, though it hasn't played out like D-Day, of course. As it relates to Iran right now, is there a realization that this is having a real impact? Obviously, gas prices, there's no reason to believe these are going to drop anywhere near where they were before this war began.
Yeah, it's a realization, Peter, that they are in an intractable situation of the president's own making, where the options keep getting worse and worse, that he is facing an adversary that is willing to sustain different types of damage and different types of pain. involving its own people than U.S. leaders are, or Western leaders typically are. And so the military campaign, they did do some damage to Iran's military, but Iran obviously has been able to rebuild in certain ways and at least continue to strike where problematic, including taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. And so what they're left with, given the depleted munitions, given the lack of appetite for boots on the ground, which is really the only way that they can, the U.S. could try to intensify their activity militarily, which the public is not going to like, is to try to do different forms of economic pressure that they clearly had not tried yet. We'll see if that works. If it doesn't work, I don't quite know where this goes, but I will say, there is a model for Iran being able to sort of toy with a U.S. president on its own terms, and it's Jimmy Carter. And I don't think that's where Donald Trump would like to be right now.
Well, there's probably no president that he would least like to be compared to
Right.
than Jimmy Carter. We've heard it in plenty of his public statements here. To be clear on Iran, there has certainly not been the total surrender that the president had said would happen in spite of his repeated claims. Instead of Iran, he's now pivoting toward Canada, focusing on this new trade war that we've been witnessing here. I'm struck by how many of the states that have close Senate races, I'm thinking about your Michigans, your Ohios, your Maines, rely on trade with Canada, the top export country. What is the president? What is the thinking here? Like, clearly this doesn't benefit America's cost of living. Is this just a distraction because he likes the fight, or what is he hearing internally from those who are his aides and advisors?
Yeah, if it's a distraction, it's not a good one. I mean, one of the things that's important to remember about where things are with the relationship between the U.S. and Canada, other than the fact that the president came in, wanting to incorporate Canada as a 51st state, which was partly a trolling exercise and his anger at Justin Trudeau, and then it became real in his mind. And in conversations that he and his folks were having, they did polling, they did all kinds of activity around it. But at the end of the day, there was a trade deal called the USMCA. It was the reworked NAFTA. It was reworked under Trump 1. He touted it as a great deal. And he came back into office. Now it's not a good deal anymore. They wanted to review it, revive it, revise it. That appears to be being put aside. There are a series of actions that the president is taking that are either to stop the economic bleeding, like the one about imported beef, or this, which is not based on an economic theory or a lot of planning. This is tit for tat and looking strong. But as you say, there are real implications for his party's Senate races in those states.
I want to talk about some of the money because the president's wallet obviously is so critical to all of this. $400 million in the super PAC right now, gave about $800,000 plus. He's been pretty tight-fisted with it to Darlene Graham there, who he was all in on from the very beginning, the, of course, sister of his longtime friend, Lindsey Graham. What's the holdup? What is he waiting on as it relates to this money?
Well, it's funny. I think you described it as the president's wallet. I mean, this is donor money. This is not his money, but he does describe it to people as my money. And I think it's as simple as that. I don't think that he is especially eager to let go of this massive pot of money that, because it is super PAC money, in theory, could be used for a number of different things. It could help pay for a ballroom. It could help pay for, the Trump library. It could go on and on and on. It's already helped pay for a lot of legal bills for himself and other people in his world. I think that if it looks like they are going to have trouble, the Republicans, retaining the House, I don't think you're going to see him spending a ton of money. But I think that's the holdup.
Can I ask you about Caroline Leavitt, press secretary? Mm-hmm. Today is officially her last day. There are several others, top aides of the president, who are now leaving in these waning weeks, months before the midterms. Not the first time this has happened. Obviously, their sort of marketability, profitability is better before Republicans conceivably lose Congress. Now, what do you make of the sort of exodus, not massive, but exodus we're seeing in some of those closest to the president?
So it's funny. There's been so little turnover this term compared to the last term that it gets easy to forget how sort of quick that revolving door was last time. Yeah. As you say, this is a timing thing in a lot of ways. The midterm cycles are often when people leave. They do see dwindling opportunities. They do want to go out. But it's not based on our reporting, Peter, and I suspect this matches yours. It's not a happy White House. The president is we don't spend as much time this term as we did in term one on the constant Trump mood beat. There's not a lot of conversations about mood this time, which is a good thing. It was too much time spent, but he is not in a great place with his staff, according to everyone we talk to. He is lashing out a lot, which tends to happen when things are not going well, and most people have decided that that they want to go do something else. That's not everybody, and there will be other people who come in, but I would say in terms of Caroline Leavitt, she had his trust in a way that most people did not in term one who served in that role, the press secretary job. He considers himself his own press secretary, and he's pretty honest about that. So I'm not sure, what does it matter? I mean, someone will come and they'll come to the briefing podium, and obviously I would much rather somebody briefing the public, but if you're not getting information, then it's a show.
Well, we've all been watching the Trump show for now approaching a decade. Maggie Haberman, always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for making time to speak to us.
Thanks, Peter.